You now see the first page of the webinar, use of KPIs to show the impact of geospatial information. Please confirm if you can just confirm that you see and hear me. Okay, so we are going ahead. Okay, I just removed the camera, so we just proceed with the slides and microphone, and I'll get back with you at the end of the presentation. So basically, let me present myself quickly. My name is Fabio Bittencourt. I'm responsible for the international software sales at Spatineo. I joined Spatineo early 2016, so it's almost 4 years now, 3.5, 4 years. I've been working with the quality and reliability of the spatial data, and also helping the customers eventually with some technical support issues, some training, and this webinar today is based on some project that was led by one of my colleagues, Jana Mäkelä, with the Finnish Environmental Institute, about the impact of the geospatial information they provide. So how they could use their strategy and those indicators that they could build actually with our help and with our methodology to achieve the measurement of the value that they are delivering to, in general, to the society, but also to the users of the geospatial information that they provide. So that is the main topic, or the main goal of this webinar here, is to share with you some of the findings of the project that we had, and also some reflections that we could have together with the Finnish Environmental Institute, and that at the end, that also made us to develop a methodology to handle similar cases. So in that sense, that is the part of the knowledge that is shared here in this webinar today. So let's get started. Let me see if there is any message at this point. No, at the moment, not. And yeah, let's just continue. First, I would like to share some questions that actually reflect on the importance of knowing the impact of the spatial information that is provided by any organization that provides such type of information. So some of the questions that they were discussed during the project, during this project, was like how many users were effectively using the spatial information provided by the Finnish Environmental Institute. Also, profile of the users, who was using and from what kind of organization or what kind of profile the users were. Like they were just citizens, they were private companies, they were like other public organizations, they were internal users. So they were like different profile of users. And also what data sets, what information, what data actually are essential that needs to be available at all times. Like what, speaking about environmental information, we can think of emergency services, for example, or some of the popular information. For example, here in Finland, the services of quality of the water during the summer, quality of the water of the lakes during the summer in particular, they are very popular. So at that point, this type of data set is important to be well maintained and available all the time. Also, what is the difference? And that is a big question for reflection, actually, for many organizations. The difference between complying with the standards and regulations like OGC and INSPIRE in Europe versus providing a high quality and reliable and easy to use and friendly and smooth usage experience to the users of the information. So in order to know that, or in order to achieve that, you also obviously need to know who the users are in the profile. So some of these questions are actually related. So and also how you can measure the value of the spatial data infrastructure overall. So if you invest in building the infrastructure, providing the data, opening the data, harmonizing, making integrations and maintaining the infrastructure overall. So what is the value of all of that to your users and how you can measure that? So that's part of the, that's what this project, part of the answer for this question was part of this project goals. So in that sense, this is also one big question for reflection. And also, what indicators are relevant to my spatial data infrastructure? While I'm operating a platform and I have a certain level of utilization, certain time of the day, or certain seasons, as I mentioned, some of the data that becomes popular like in a season fashion, that is also relevant to build good indicators and good visualization so that you have clear understanding of how the infrastructure is being used and how you can most effectively maintain that. So, right now, what I would like to do is share with you one poll, one quick questionnaire. I will be sharing this at the screen. Just bear with me for a second. Okay. I hope you see the, okay, the poll is in progress. I think, yeah, it's calculating. I'm gonna close that in a second. Okay, now I will share the results. So we have, yeah, 30% of the audience, they have strategic goals related to spatial data. 10% haven't got there yet, which is okay. And 60% currently doesn't have, but they are on the planning phase for it, which is good level. So it's good for us also to understand what stage that you are, and I hope you find, so the 60% you probably find really valuable. Also 90%, well, depending on where you are, you find really valuable. I hope you find really valuable information on what we are going to share. So let's move on. Okay, getting back to the presentation. So the next, one of the things that the starting of this project was to align the strategic goals from the Finnish Environmental Institute, SUKE, and with the objectives of the project. So they have these strategy goals. Some of those were like high level strategy definitions, and they had one of those was like provide crucial information and innovative solutions for a sustainable society. So under that, they had that they need to respond proactively to the society's information needs, which is always changing. So they need to update often, and also make a difference for decision making in the public and private sector for the research that they do and the development activities with high quality expertise. So they try to share the expertise for creating sustainable solutions, and those sustainable solutions will actually help to build even more the expertise. So in that sense, that was part of the strategy from the Finnish Environmental Institute. So that how that is related to the project, the fact that they need to share the information, there was one key aspect of it. So they started to open the data in 2018, the environmental data that they had, they started to open in 2018. So according to our database, only counting the spatial web services that we identify from the Finnish Environmental Institute, we can say that they have over 6,600 spatial data sets. So they have to maintain all of that information. They also provide all the environmental information systems. They have web map applications, and they also have, as I mentioned, web services. So we count 77. It's around 40 WMS, some 30 something Inspire services, and I think it's 5 web feature services. And also they have satellite observations that they also use to generate data. So the usage of open data, they identify it that increases every year. They have that studies, and they know that information has been increasingly used by their users. So you can find more information on this link here, suke.fi/open information, and you can find some information in English as well. So you can look into more detail on the Finnish Environmental Institute if you are curious about. Well, based on the project, as I mentioned in the beginning, we developed this methodology that we call Spatineo impact, which the goal is to measure the impact of the infrastructure into the how the information is producing impact in the society, in the users, internally as well. So we use this scheme here that I'll go through quickly. One of the stages, the first stage is the automation of data collection. So we have our own platform, Spatineo Monitor, Spatineo Performance, that you automate the collection of data. We also have developed automation of catalogs for some customers. We also use customers' data, some of the data that is provided by the customer, surveys that the customer may develop internally or externally with or without our help. Sometimes we also help them to build the surveys, and also third-party data to identify, in this case of this project, was to identify the IPs, the IP addresses, and identify the profile of the users that I will show you in a minute. So that was also used for this project specifically. It can be used in other projects as well. Then we assess the impact via real-time dashboards. We created some dashboards with good visualization and good indicators that are relevant to the organization. Also, we produce automated reports that can help the organizations with the information quickly and in a way that it saves a lot of effort to generate some strategic information that can be generated from the spatial data utilization. And also that help with the transparency that once you communicate the level of utilization and how the infrastructure is being used and how the entire investment in the infrastructure is being utilized. So that is also increases the transparency especially from government organizations. So then you have the recommendations of the work. We evaluate different options. We can recommend specific technologies to be used, and we also help with the communication with the stakeholders, users, and other parties. And then there is the implementation that involves some technology transfer and improvement of the indicators themselves. So that is also something that we can help the organization with. So in summary, we get the strategic goals, we align with some measurable indicators, and then we help through the methodology to recognize the success of the implementation of the spatial data infrastructure. So it's not only knowing if the infrastructure is working, it's a lot further than that to recognize the level of utilization and the level of success achieved with the implementation of the platform. So that is methodology that we developed and then that was used. So I will now launch the second poll. Just 1 second. Okay. So the question is, if your organization knows what or which spatial data and services need to be best maintained. So what are the key spatial data and services, if you are aware of that? So let's give you a moment. We already have some answers. I will just wait for a few more seconds, and we'll close and share with you the poll. Okay, I'll close that now. All right, so I will share. So we have similar, yeah, somehow similar to the previous questions, but to the previous poll, but yeah, it's slightly different. So about 10% know. They analyze the data. They know what needs to be best maintained, so they are aware. But 64% just have an idea, but not 100% accuracy. And then we have about 27 to 30% that still don't have, didn't get there yet. So it's understandable. It's yeah. Now I think you can see the results of the poll. So it's interesting, and we will get back to that later. But that's also one of the aspects that we helped the customer with this project. Okay, so I will get back to the presentation. Just sharing the screen again. All right, so let's move on. Okay, yeah. So one of the indicators, or one of the goals was from the Finnish Environmental Institute was that the citizens participate more extensively in the observations and the collection of the data from the environment. So they could report conditions, they could report observations, and then there would be used from Suke to produce data based on observation. So they call those like all data. Later on, you see that type of thing. And then we discuss it and come up with an indicator that what is the level of activeness from the citizens in providing those observations. So in that sense, we could compare the number of users helping some of the conditions. So you can see here the lake wiki, which is called the wiki of the lakes. There were the highest number of users participating in generating information. Also in the ice condition here in Finland in the winter, this is also something that is seasonal. And also the algae level on the sea, and also the surface temperature of the water. There was also some good level of utilization. So these were like some of the findings. I'm not getting to the details of it, but you get the idea that we could measure the level of activity that was done by the citizens in providing observations and conditions. So that was one aspect of the project. The other aspect, which is actually surprised the Institute, was the fact that they provide flooding information about the cities that has risk of floods. So some of the municipalities, they actually wanted to measure if the municipalities that they have the risk, they were actually using that data. And they found that some of the municipalities, they were actually not even aware that the service or the information was available. So in that sense, they have the goal that decrease the vulnerability of the cities in climate changes aspects, which is flooding is one of them. But not all of the municipalities were using properly the information on flood risk areas. So there was one thing that we could also provide with the project, providing the impact indicator for that data, and then they could communicate with the users and the organizations about that information and the needs or the to adequate the level of utilization from those organizations who presumably would need that information. So that was one interesting aspect of that project as well. The other thing, the other point was one of the other goals that was to provide comprehensive information on built environment to authorities, companies, and citizens. And then the impact indicator that was used was who are the specific users of data on the built environment. So we could define from the built environment type of spatial data or spatial information provided the profile of the users. So here we made the distribution of the utilization for the Environmental Institute. So we could find that the utilization of built environment was distributed among private persons and organizations, also at the national level of administration. Part of that utilization, obviously these days, was not available. We couldn't identify. Some of the local level administration, universities, institutions, private companies, and also cloud providers, and other regional level administration. So that was the distribution of the requests for that, specifically for the built environment information. And also, another very interesting was the distribution of the profile of the users for the environmental information services that were utilized. So the goal from the Environmental Institute was key information on the user groups that use the environmental information. And then we got the indicator that was the division of usage of environmental information in user groups. So here is the distribution of different types of applications and services and data. So here we have the first graph, we have the web maps. The second is the OData, which is, remember, the observations from citizens. And the last one was the spatial web services in the form of web map services, web feature, Inspire, and so forth. So we could see that in the spatial web services, we could see somehow a predominance of the national level of administration because they are more familiar with the spatial web services. For obvious reasons, most of the national organizations involved in spatial data, they are familiar with Inspire, they are familiar with the spatial web services, so they use that type of information more intensively. For the observation data, we had companies, but also private users using that information. And for the web maps, we had private and small companies using that mostly. So this was the establishment of the profiles of the utilization, and that for that we use a combination of tools, and not only our tools but also external tools to identify and could compile that information in the profiles. So recommendations and future actions that came out of this as an outcome from this project was that to ensure that all the information from the maps, the downloads, and the submissions from the citizens were collected properly and analyzed and processed. So that is one of the basic recommendations. They already have that, but that project emphasized the need for really like collecting that in a systematic way. And then there was also a recommendation for a further study to understand the differences between the amount of users on web maps, if that was just natural or some of the potential users were not finding the web maps or the information. There was also, obviously, as we see, there should be some better communication about the flood maps and the information to the municipalities that are affected by this type of risk. And that could be extended to all kinds of risks, like you can think of avalanche, you can think of any natural disaster risks that you can think of that and extend that kind of study to other areas as well. This was just one example that applies to the Environmental Institute here, but obviously we have a lot of different information out there that could be utilized and communicated in different ways. And then the impact assessment could be developed based on the user experience. So because the Institute already had some maturity on the analysis of the user, then we could develop that furthermore. So we could think of which indicators were the most beneficial. That can be also something that other organizations can ask themselves about. What indicators can be used that would be key to the performance of the infrastructure as a whole. And also new information that would arise, because this project was early 2018, end of 2017. So they asked themselves what kind of new information could arise during the year 2018. So that is one question that they had. And then the focus of the work was in the utilization of the data. So the data to have value, in our view, and also in the Environmental Institute, it has to have some utilization. So obviously not all the data will be utilized to the same extent, but obviously if you generate data, if you make it available and you provide the infrastructure for it, it's important that this is used, and it's used in the right way, and you can measure the utilization. So at last, before we go to the questions, I would like to share the last poll of this session. Give me 1 second. Okay. Sharing. I'm sharing the last poll. If you think this methodology, this type of project could be interesting to your organization, there is no commitment here. It's just out of curiosity that we developed this methodology. We have done this project to other organizations here in Finland, but obviously we would like to know if there is a solution developed for one organization here. We assume that that would be interesting to others. So, okay, well, yeah, we have the results. So let me close the poll. Let me share the results with you. So 1/3 would say that yes, most definitely, which is good. And 2/3 would say that not at the moment, but in the future, that could be one possibility. So I'm very happy to hear that, because yeah, we do have the confidence that this could be can be like very beneficial to many of the organizations, because they ask themselves, and they do not have the proper methodology, I would say, to and also the internal resources to do such studies. So usually you need to focus on other issues and other problems rather than developing that kind of methodology to do that. So let me close that and get back to the presentation. All right. Now opening for questions. We have a couple minutes for questions. I'll be happy to take. We'll be looking at the chat. If you have on your window, you should have a chat area on the right side in the panel of the tool of the GoToWebinar. But yeah, I'll wait for a couple minutes. If there is any questions, I'll be happy to take. Okay, apparently there are no questions. At least I don't see any. If you have any questions in the future, let me just leave my contact information quickly here. If you want to know a little bit more about any specific topic, you can just contact me by email. It's quite easy, fabio@spatineo.com, or telephone, or on our website. You can also see there is a lot of information there. So you can contact me and I'll be happy to take further questions. So if there is no other questions at the moment, at this point, I'd like to thank you all for the time that you spent listening and participating. It was very interesting to share this information with all of you. And well, I wish you a very good rest of the day, and I hope to see you in other events from Spatineo. And if you have any questions later, I'm happy to take those. So I would like to say goodbye for now, and hope to see you in other events. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.